Say your name out loud right now. Not to anyone. Just to the room. Notice something? It sounds wrong. Not incorrect, not mispronounced, just slightly off. Like a word you have repeated so many times it has lost its meaning. Like it belongs to someone else. Now imagine someone across a crowded room says it instead. A stranger. In conversation. Not to you. Just using your name in a sentence. About someone else entirely. You will hear it. Above every other voice. Above the music and the noise and the 30 simultaneous conversations that your brain had already decided weren't worth processing. Your name will reach you as cleanly as a signal through static. The same sound. Physically, acoustically, measurably the same configuration of phonemes. And yet, not the same thing at all. This is not a metaphor. It is a documented neurological event. And it suggests something stranger than it first appears about what a name actually is. In 1953, a British cognitive scientist named Colin Cherry conducted a series of experiments at the Imperial College London. He wanted to understand how human beings select one stream of sound from several simultaneous streams, a problem he called the cocktail party problem. His findings established something that feels obvious only in retrospect. The brain is not a passive receiver. It is an active filter. At any given moment, you are surrounded by more auditory information than you can consciously process, and so your brain has developed a system of triage. Most sound is quietly downgraded, moved to the background, processed at a level below conscious attention. But certain sounds are never downgraded. Your own name is one of them. Research since Cherry has confirmed that the brain responds to one's own name even during sleep, even under general anesthesia, in some documented cases, even when the subject is deeply engaged in a competing cognitive task. The brain maintains a standing priority alert, a background process, always running, scanning incoming audio for this one specific pattern. When it finds it, it interrupts whatever else was happening. That much is the established account. The mechanism is well understood. The alert fires. Attention shifts. You hear your name. But there is a problem with this explanation. It explains detection. It does not explain the difference in how the name sounds. Why, when you say your own name to an empty room, does it feel hollow? Why does it feel like something has misfired? Here is what is actually happening. And it requires stepping back from the mechanics of hearing and into something less comfortable. A name is not a sound. A name is a social object. It only fully exists inside a relationship between a speaker and a receiver. When you were an infant, your name was not a word to you. It was an event. It arrived with faces and warmth and urgency. It arrived when someone needed your attention, or when someone was afraid, or when someone was pleased. It arrived surrounded by context so dense that the sound itself became inseparable from the meaning. Your brain did not learn your name the way it learned other words. It learned your name the way it learned faces. As a thing that belongs to a specific, irreplaceable social transaction. This is why, across every documented culture, names function differently from other nouns. Anthropologists have catalogued naming ceremonies, naming taboos. The prohibition on speaking the names of the dead. The practice in many traditions of having a secret name known only to family. The widespread belief that to know something's true name is to hold power over it. These are not superstitions that happen to resemble each other. They are different cultural expressions of the same underlying intuition, that a name is not just a label. It is a tether, a relational object that only exists when both ends of the relationship are present. When you say your name to an empty room, one end of the tether is missing. and something in your nervous system registers the absence immediately. Not as a thought, as a sensation. In 2006, a team of neuroscientists at the Montreal Neurological Institute published research showing that hearing one's own name activates a different pattern of brain regions than hearing other names. Notably, this includes areas associated with self-referential processing, regions that activate when you think about yourself, when you imagine your own future, when you consider your own identity as a distinct object in the world. Your name, in other words, is not stored near your vocabulary. It is stored near yourself. And here's where the strangeness deepens. Because identity, the continuous sense of being a particular someone, is also a relational construct. You know who you are partly because other people behave as though you are that person. The continuity of your identity is maintained not only from the inside but from the outside. Social context is not decorative. It is structural. When no one is present, the name has no social receiver. But more than that, without the receiver, the name cannot perform its primary function, which is to summon a particular version of you into a social space. When you say your name alone, the summoning has nowhere to land. You are an invocation without an audience, and the self that the name is supposed to conjure, the social self, the self that exists in relation to others, briefly, has no surface to project onto. Some researchers in social cognition describe this in terms of the looking-glass self, a concept first articulated by the sociologist Charles Cooley in 1902. We perceive ourselves partly through the perception of others. The self is, in a meaningful sense, a reflection. And a name spoken with no one to hear it is a reflection with no mirror. Step back further still, much further. The capacity that makes your name feel different in solitude, the capacity to model social presence, to detect the absence of witness, to register whether a communicative act has a receiver. This is not a minor cognitive feature. It is one of the most metabolically expensive and evolutionarily recent capabilities the human brain possesses. Other animals do not have names in this sense. They may have calls that function as identifiers, but the human name is something specific, a portable social address, a token that encodes not just identity, but relationship, history, expectation, and obligation. It requires a brain capable of modeling other minds, of holding in working memory not just the information that you exist, but a model of how another being perceives you existing. This is theory of mind, and it is, by current understanding, largely unique to humans among terrestrial life, possibly unique in the observable universe. Consider what that means. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. For the vast majority of that time, there were no names. There was no mechanism by which one arrangement of matter could assign a portable social address to another arrangement of matter and invest that address with relational meaning. There was mass and energy and the slow accretion of complexity. And eventually there was life. And eventually that life became strange enough to label itself. Your name is one of the universe's most recent and improbable inventions. A sound that does not just describe an object, but participates in a relationship. That requires two minds to fully exist. That can be felt as hollow when one of those minds is absent. And when you say it alone to an empty room, when it sounds wrong, when the air takes it in without acknowledgement, you are feeling, in a very small and specific way, what it would mean for that relationship to not exist, for the tether to have only one end, for the name to be just a sound. You were given your name before you could understand what a name was. Someone decided that a particular arrangement of sounds would, from that point forward, serve as a handle on your existence. They said it to you, and to others, and eventually you learned to turn when you heard it. And then something more complicated happened. You began to inhabit it. The sound became inseparable from the felt sense of being you. But it only functions that way in the presence of another mind. That is a strange thing to sit with. That part of what you are, specifically the named part, the addressable part, the part that can be summoned, requires a witness to fully exist. That the self is not entirely interior. That some of it lives in the space between you and whoever is listening. The empty room is not being unkind when your name sounds wrong in it. It is simply being honest. It is showing you what the name is without the relationship. What the sound is without the social architecture that has, for your entire life, made it mean something. Just phonemes. Just air moving. We have known this, some part of us always. It is why we do not speak the names of the dead lightly. It is why we whisper names in sacred spaces. It is why, in the oldest stories from every tradition, names are treated as objects that can be lost, or stolen, or destroyed. Not because our ancestors were primitive, because they understood in the vocabulary available to them what neuroscience is now confirming in its own vocabulary. A name without a listener is not quite a name. Say yours again if you like, to no one in particular, and notice what is missing.